Star Trek has had a huge number of guest stars over the years. Many, like Whoopi Goldberg and John LaLancie, are incredibly fleshed out characters who often are integral to the plot. Other guest appearances, such as that of Stephen Hawking, are basically just there to gloat over the fact that they could get Stephen Hawking. Regardless of their reason for being there, guest stars will often have their own demands for their characters, either to make them more interesting or simply to make their own lives easier during the production. Some of these demands are fair and end up changing the show for the better, while others are merely self-serving or distract from the plot. This list will be going over some of the most unusual demands from guest stars appearing on Star Trek, and the reasons why the writers chose to go along with them. Whether these ideas were good or not though, it is admirable that the writers were willing to hear out the guest suggestions. With that in mind then, I'm Ellie with Trek Culture, and these are 10 most unusual demands made by Star Trek guest stars. Number 10. John LaLancie wanting Q to stay original. John LaLancie played the lovable fan favourite Q since the pilot of The Next Generation in 1987, and has a great deal of respect for the character. When John was requested to return as Q once more for Season 2 of Star Trek Picard, he agreed on the condition that his return means something, and not be simply a cheap way to pull in old fans. His exact words during a guest star panel for the Trek Talks telethon were, "I am very concerned about recreating. That has a lot of potential disasters attached to it." Afterwards, he says that the executives agreed to this. This quote is very encouraging to fans looking forward to the upcoming season. Q's story was wrapped up perfectly at the end of The Next Generation, but the plot left it open-ended as to whether or not he would ever face Picard again. Because of this, it's great that John is such an advocate for doing something new with the character, because if Q's just there to say some funny one-liners and teleport people through space and time for no good reason, it will slightly cheapen the impact of the original goodbye we saw of the character in All Good Things, much like his cameos in Deep Space Nine and Voyager did. Number 9. Denise Crosby forcing her character to have better writing. Denise Crosby played the Enterprise D's original Chief Security Officer Tasha Yar in the first few episodes of The Next Generation, before being killed off in an extremely unsatisfying and sudden way in the episode Skin of Evil. In an interview with StarTrek.com, Denise explained that she quit the show because she felt like her character was not given much to do, and that she was mostly used as stage dressing, which was fairly accurate. However, her complaints were not in vain, as she returns in the Season 3 episode Yesterday's Enterprise as another version of Yar from an alternate universe. Eventually, the alternate Yar has a child with a Romulan and gives birth to one of the most interesting characters of The Next Generation, also played by Crosby, the half-human, half-Romulan Sealer, who attempts to plunge the Klingon Empire into civil war. In the end, Denise's demands for better writing for her character, while not immediately effective, did eventually lead to Tasha Yar becoming more compelling. Number 8. Stephen Hawking taking jabs at Einstein. Dr. Stephen Hawking is the only person in Star Trek history to play himself in an episode. He appears in the episode Descent as a hologram created by Data in a simulation of a poker match between the greatest minds of human history. Dr. Hawking was one of the world's most inspirational and accomplished physicists, who fundamentally changed our understanding of black holes by applying the properties of quantum mechanics to explain their decay. Einstein, however, who also appears as a hologram, was a vocal opponent to quantum mechanics and referred to it as spooky action at a distance, believing it to be merely a misinterpretation of the data, long before it was solidified in science by people like Hawking. Hawking actually managed to sneak in a joke about this very disagreement. As Einstein tries to call Hawking on his bluff, he says to him, "All the quantum fluctuations in the universe will not change the cards in your hand," to which Hawking responds, "Wrong again, Albert." The whole scene is flavoured by the saltiness of Stephen's gloating. Number 7. Robert Picardo getting his cameo in First Contact. Upon watching Star Trek First Contact, fans of Voyager were delighted to see an appearance of Robert Picardo, who played Voyager's emergency medical hologram, or EMH. He takes over sickbay when all of the medical officers die unexpectedly, and eventually gains sentience. Interestingly, the original script for First Contact didn't include this crossover scene. Robert Picardo said in a 2012 interview that he campaigned heavily behind the scenes for the writers to include his character. Robert reasoned that the flagship of Starfleet, the Enterprise, would surely they have all the same medical technology as a lesser ship, Voyager. When asked why the Enterprise's EMH would look exactly the same as Voyager's, he explained that it would make sense that the first generation of a new piece of technology would have the same design on any ship. Presumably, Robert Picardo mostly wanted to have a role in a huge blockbuster movie to help his acting career, but regardless, the cameo works so perfectly in the context of the scene and helps to connect two different Trek shows together in a way that's not at all forced. Number 6. ALICG coming into Endgame fresh. Susanna Thompson was originally going to be cast as the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact before Alice Krige was ultimately chosen. When Alice wasn't available to return for Voyager, the studio called Susanna in before eventually returning with Alice in the final episode, where she had a very strange philosophy on the character. According to Star Trek Magazine issue 169, while filming the Voyager finale Endgame, Krige intentionally chose to limit the ways she prepared for her return to the role, deciding neither to watch her old portrayal nor Thompson's. This was not done out of disrespect for the role at all. As Alice stated, whoever had played the role, I would have made the same decision. Later explaining, I thought to see someone else's performance would throw me off course. Somehow her appearance in Endgame was seamless and fit perfectly with Susanna's version from earlier in the series. She managed to get the same robotic, unfeeling evil of the Borg Queen that she gave us in First Contact by limiting her research and trying to come in fresh like she did last time. Perhaps for a character as robotic as the Borg Queen, this is best. Number 5. Iggy Pop being forced to play a calm and collected VORTA. Iggy Pop is believed by many to be a founder of both 70s punk and 90s grunge music. He was most widely acclaimed for being an extremely high-energy stage performer. When producer Ira Steven Behr, a huge fan of Iggy Pop, asked him to join them on an episode of Deep Space Nine, he was originally unavailable, but when he received a rather serious shoulder injury, he agreed to come on during his recovery, under the agreement that he would not be overworked or forced to be too physical. This circumstance was unfortunate, though obviously not Iggy's fault, and really limited what the writers could do with the character. Here they had one of the most intense performers in punk history, and they couldn't even get him to show a bit of that angst and energy, instead deciding to write him as a calm, nearly emotionless VORTA named Yelgren. All in all, the demands caused by Iggy's injury, while necessary, really detracted from how fun this episode could have been with Iggy at his best. Number 4. Christian Slater securing his role in the Undiscovered Country. Renowned American actor Christian Slater grew up as a massive Star Trek fan, joking that he would sometimes even shave his eyebrows slightly to give them a Vulcan appearance. He wanted to be on Star Trek, and luckily for him, it just so happened that his mother, Mary Jo Slater, was in charge of the casting for Star Trek The Undiscovered Country. Technically, the demand for Christian to appear in the film did not come from Christian himself, but from his mother, though it's fair to say that he probably suggested it. No one is judging him for this though. It's clear that the majority of Trekkies would sell their soul for a day on the bridge of a starship, though it must have been slightly annoying for all these actors who had worked their whole lives to get to this point, only to have some young guy waltz onto the set just because his mother was in charge of the casting. Number 3. Whoopi Goldberg suggesting her role on The Next Generation. By the time The Next Generation was airing, Whoopi Goldberg was already a household name. When she requested a role in the show, producers thought that she was joking. After all, why would a huge Hollywood celebrity want to be on some weird spin-off sci-fi show with only a small cult following? They ignored her request as a prank. Whoopi remained persistent though, as she grew up watching the original series and adored Star Trek, mostly due to its inclusion of Nichelle Nichols, one of the first black women to be featured regularly on an American television show. She contacted Gene Roddenberry, the show's creator, directly, saying, "I am a Star Trek fan. I was a Star Trek fan long before I was Whoopi Goldberg, and I'm wondering if there's some part I can play in your show." When questioned why she would choose such a lower paying gig than she was able to get elsewhere, Whoopi responded, "I am successful now and I can do what I like." Words to live by. Whoopi also had an entire secret backstory in mind for her character Guinan. She assisted the writers to help Guinan become the most mysterious person on the show. Number 2. Dean Stockwell's fear of makeup. Scott Bakula, who played Captain Archer on Star Trek Enterprise, is perhaps best known for his role in the series Quantum Leap, in which he co-starred with Dean Stockwell. Fans of Quantum Leap were excited when it was announced that Dean would be returning returning to appear with Bakula one last time in the episode Detained from Enterprise, in which he plays Colonel Grat, a Tandaran military officer in charge of a prison. His facial makeup does little to differentiate him as an alien, as he basically looks like a human with a little weird wrinkle above his eyebrows, but this was intentional. Dean only agreed to appear on the show if he could be assured that he would not have to endure the multi-hour makeup sessions required of actors wearing alien prosthetics. Undoubtedly, he had heard horror stories from actors such as Michael Dorn and Ethan Phillips, who were forced to sit for intense facial makeup almost every day for years. Not to mention having to wake up before everyone else and spend hours sitting in a chair getting it done. Stories like this are enough to scare some actors away from long-term Trek roles. Number 1. The Rock's WWE cross-sponsorship with Voyager. By far, the most ridiculous guest star demands in Star Trek history came from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson during his appearance on the Voyager episode Sunkatse. The Rock came on the show with one goal in mind: promoting his WWE wrestling career. This was slightly before he became the most massive celebrity in the known universe, so at the time, a partnership with a popular sci-fi series was just what he needed to get more viewers on WWE, as well as kickstart his acting career. In fact, the whole episode was part of a celebration event for their network UPN for acquiring the rights to air WWE. The need to include some shoehorned wrestling story starring The Rock forced the writers into creating what is ultimately one of the most uninspired episodes of Trek history, clearly serving as nothing more than an ad. While it is fun to see The Rock appearing in Voyager as well as performing his famous eyebrow raise, it would have been nice for his character to be a little more advanced than simply The Rock with some stuff on his forehead. And there we have it, folks. If there are any unusual demands that we missed, then let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Don't forget to head over to Twitter to follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Trek Culture. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to boldly go where no one has gone before.